Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Now, we are going to unpack what has to be, without a doubt, one of the greatest and just absolutely impossible survival stories ever recorded in human history. I am so pumped to share this one with you, mainly because it really challenges everything we think we know about human endurance. Today, we're digging into the completely true story of the girl who fell from the sky.
Right off the bat, let me ask you something. It's a life-or-death mystery. Could a person actually survive falling from an airplane? I mean, your gut reaction is probably, no way, absolutely not. That sounds completely impossible. And honestly, you'd be totally right to think that. But as we're about to see, sometimes reality is way more unbelievable than anything Hollywood could ever script. So let's dive right in and see exactly how the impossible happened.
Part 1. Disaster in the Sky, Christmas Eve 1971. We start with 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke and her mother. They were aboard Lanza Flight 508, flying across Peru to meet up with her dad for the holidays when the plane flew straight into this violent, churning thunderstorm.
And then, literally the ultimate nightmare happens. A bolt of lightning. A direct strike hits the aircraft with such catastrophic force that it caused the plane to just break apart in midair. The cabin completely split wide open, and passengers were violently thrown out right into the middle of this raging storm.
10,000. That is the horrifying reality of what happened next. Juliane, who was actually still strapped into her row of seats, fell right out of the broken aircraft and plummeted more than 10,000 feet down toward the earth. Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. That is nearly 2 miles of pure free fall, falling right through a thunderstorm, strapped to a piece of a plane, heading straight for the Amazon rainforest.
So how on earth did she survive? Well, the sheer physical miracle of it all really came down to one specific thing: the Amazon canopy. Now, falling into a dense, wild jungle sounds completely terrifying, but it was actually the one thing that saved her life. As she plummeted, the tremendously thick rainforest canopy basically acted like a giant, natural safety net. The heavy, dense tree branches systematically absorbed the kinetic energy of her impact, which slowed her fall just enough so that she landed alive. It completely defies belief, but she actually survived the drop.
Part 2. Alone in the Amazon, waking up to a nightmare. Hours after the crash, Juliane finally regains consciousness. She's completely isolated, missing her mom, and she's dealing with a broken collarbone, deep cuts, a nasty concussion, and a totally swollen eye.
You know, most people in that exact situation would have just gone into shock and given up entirely. But Juliane didn't. See, her parents were actually biologists who had spent years working in the Amazon, and they had drilled 2 incredibly strict survival rules into her head. Rule 1, if you're lost, find water. And Rule 2, follow that water to civilization. This highly specialized knowledge, it literally became her blueprint for staying alive. She found a tiny stream, and despite her horrific injuries, she just started walking.
Which brings us to Part 3, 9 days of survival, the agonizing trek. Juliane is now slowly making her way through one of the most dangerous, hostile environments on the planet with practically zero supplies.
Let's look at how this played out. Day 1 starts with that severe concussion and just total terrifying isolation. By day 4, actual starvation is setting in. She's constantly evading snakes and venomous insects, surviving only by drinking from that stream. And by day 9, the physical horror really peaks. A deep wound on her arm had actually become severely infected with maggots. I mean, the pain had to be unimaginable. But the absolute crucial point here is this: she pushed through all those biological and physical horrors because she knew for a fact that stopping meant she would die. And incredibly, it was on that 9th day that she finally stumbled upon a small boat.
Part 4, the rescue, a miraculous discovery. Finding that small boat beside the river totally changed everything. Clinging to literally the last threads of her life, she waited in a rudimentary shelter used by local fishermen.
The very next morning, those fishermen returned. I mean, just imagine their absolute shock, right? Finding a battered, severely injured teenage girl standing entirely alone deep in the Amazon. But they immediately sprang into action. They gave her food and clean water, treated her infected wounds the absolute best they could right there, and quickly got her downriver to safety and proper medical care. Once she finally got to the hospital, the stark, completely devastating reality of Lanza Flight 508 was confirmed. Passengers aboard, 92. Sole survivor, 1. Out of every single person on that plane, Juliane Koepcke was the only one to make it out of the jungle alive. But you know, this story carries a really profound heartbreak, which brings us to the tragic fate of her mother,
later investigations revealed a devastating truth. Her mom actually survived that initial multi-thousand-foot fall, just like Juliana did, but tragically, she was severely injured and ultimately succumbed to those injuries, passing away before any rescuers could find her in the dense jungle.
Part 5. A legacy of resilience. Moving forward. The psychological toll of all this was obviously unimaginable, but Juliane absolutely refused to let this tragedy completely define or destroy her life. She eventually became a successful biologist, just like her parents, and even returned to the crash site later in life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to distill this whole unbelievable event down to what I call the survival triad: knowledge, determination, and hope. Knowledge, because she knew to follow the water straight from her parents' advice. Determination, because she kept walking with a broken collarbone and nasty infections. She just refused to quit. And hope. She truly believed that if she kept moving, she'd find civilization. You put those three things together, and they quite literally make the difference between life and death.
I want to leave you guys with this thought. Sometimes the most unbelievable stories are not made for Hollywood. They are real. Over 50 years later, Juliane's story is still this massive testament to the absolute limits of human endurance. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If everything was completely stripped away and you were literally falling from the sky, what would your survival triad look like? Thank you so much for diving into this incredible source material with me. Keep learning, keep asking the big questions, and I will catch you all on the next explainer.